Okay, hello, Professor Paul Gruen here, Quinnipiac University, Web Techniques, ICM505. And we're going to basically do the web server badge. And the web server badge will also include a couple of key steps um, for the PHP developer badge. I'm going to teach you a couple of very important PHP techniques that will make your life a lot easier. And I'd like you to do this work before you do the CSS badge because you're going to want to apply what you're learning here in this badge to the CSS badge. The biggest problem that a lot of times we face is as our website grows, maintaining information across many pages becomes a very tedious task. So, for instance, say if you had a web page with 5 pages and you changed your phone number in the footer section, or something needed to be changed in the header section. If it was only 5 pages, it'd only take you a couple of minutes to make a change to those 5 pages. But as you can see, your web pages and your website is growing. And what we need to do is we're going to create a thing called a PHP Include. And the PHP Include will allow us to create one file, just one, and then call that or include that file in all the other pages. And to make that work, you have to have a web server up and running. And a web server does a lot of different things. And we're basically going to use the web server to be able to write PHP code to let the web server take that PHP code and interpret it and then spit out and create HTML code. Now, what will happen is right now, all of the pages you create, when you just double click on the resume.html page or the bio.html page, the index.html page in your ICM505 folder, it will pull up and display the browser because the your Windows system or your Mac system knows that HTML needs a browser to run, and your default browser sets it up. However, we're going to rename all of our files to .php. And what's going to happen is when you click on them in the browser, they're not going to work. When you click on them in your folder, you're going to expect the browser to pull up, and it probably won't happen. What will happen is it'll probably go into a text editor or something like that. And what we need to do is we need to have software that is similar to your DreamHost, your Bluehost, your GoDaddy, to your website account. We need to have software running on our machine locally to be able to take the PHP code and translate it into HTML to then display in the browser. What this video was not going to do is show you how to install Xampp or Xampp. I provide you a couple of links and I'll show you how to get there real quick. And then I'm going to have you do some special things to your ICM505 folder. Your ICM505 folder isn't going to be living where it's living now. We're going to move that, and then we're going to do a bunch of work. So this is going to be a pretty hefty video, and get ready to sit down and enjoy. So the first thing to do is you need to install Xampp or Xampp. If you go to Google and type Xampp, and then you'll see a link here for download. And then basically there's two versions you can download. There's the 5.5 or the 5.6. I suggest downloading the 5.6. That's what I'm running. And the difference between the two is one has PHP 5.5 and the other has PHP 5.6. Just click on here and then basically run the download. This file here, this installer will download, and then click on it, and it basically will walk you through it. And I don't want to do it now because I've already have it installed. I don't want to overwrite my existing installation. Now, one of the things that I would like to note is that on that install, it will default to put it on your C drive, but my C drive is really small. It's a RAM. It's a solid state drive. It's not a hard drive. So I put everything on my E drive. So you can, at some point, it'll say C:\Xampp. I actually have my Xampp folder stuff installed on my E drive. So those of you with computers with more than one drive and you want to move this to another location, you can do that. For you Mac people, type in MAMP in Google, click on the downloads, click on the download here, and then basically it's standard. You take the icon, you click on it, you drag the into the application folder, and it will download. You will actually get two icons. You'll get a MAMP and a MAMP Pro. You do not need MAMP Pro. You will get it. You don't need to purchase MAMP Pro. You won't need the features of MAMP Pro, and you'll just always click on the MAMP icon on your Mac. So I'm going to be showing using Xampp, but a lot of the things are very similar. So now let's assume we've gone through the installation process and that what we need to do now is we need to run our server. So like, for instance, if and the server, you know how we go www.ourdomainname.com. What we have to do is, instead of saying out in the internet, we have to say, I want to run my local host. So right now, my server is not running, but if I type in localhost, it's going to try to connect, and it says unable to connect. This shows me that my web server is not running locally. Again, what we're doing, there's nothing magical about WebServer. It's just software that does a bunch of stuff. And instead of being a version out on the internet at bluehost.com or wherever your host provider is, we're going to put our own copy of it on, and we just have. So now I'm going to go start, and then if you go all programs, Xampp, under here you will have a icon for Xampp, excuse me, Xampp control panel. I actually have dragged mine up to my favorites up here. So I'm going to run Xampp control panel. Now here's Xampp control panel. What I want you to do for the lesson is create a Word document and give me a few screenshots, and that will show me that you've done this work. So give me a screenshot of this control panel, and then there's several different servers, several different pieces of the software that you can run. Apache, MySQL, Filezilla. This is not the same as the client Filezilla that you're running. This is actually the FTP server out at the other end. We don't need that. Mercury and Tomcat. All we need is Apache. And so if we click Start, if everything goes well, you shall see that it'll change to green and that it's detected and running. So now, if we take our browser and we type in localhost and hit enter, we now get this this window. Now, what's interesting, notice it says localhost Xampp. Okay, there is a folder out on your website. You have a www folder or a public HTML folder. That folder for this server is actually called htdocs. And underneath the htdocs folder is a folder called Xampp. So what we want to do is, I don't want to go to here every time automatically. I don't want to do that. So let's go to our installation. So I'm going to open up Windows Explorer, I'm going to go to my computer. I'm going to, as I said, I've installed it on my E drive, Xampp, and then notice there's a folder called htdocs. There's a lot of folders here. That's a whole lot of stuff that is actually doing and is the parts for the Xampp server. But this htdocs folder is pretty much the www folder out on your web server or the public HTML folder. Let's click that and see this page here called index.php. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to rename this, and I'm just going to put index.org. The web server, when you type in localhost, is looking for an index.php page or an index.html page. If I had an index.html page there, it would display that. But I'm going to rename it so it's not index. I'm going to come back to my browser, and I'm going to get rid of Xampp here in the browser. I'm just going to type localhost again. Now what I have is I have a directory listing of this folder. Now, your htdocs folder will not have things like KB1 GWO, PHP Noob, and all these other folders, demo site. You won't have those folders in there. Again, I've got a lot of other work and stuff I've done in. And notice here, I'm in my browser, there's the index.org PHP folder. If I click on that, I get back to my Xampp directory. And this is going to be helpful later on. So I'm going to hit the back button. I don't want to lose this index.php file, but I don't want, by default, I don't want this to appear in my face all the time when I type localhost. So now, what we've done is we have our local host set up. Our web server is up and running, and we have things here. Now, what I need to do is I need to find my ICM505 folder that I've been working on. So and for each of us, it's going to be someplace different. And so I happen to have my folder, if I believe correctly, I have it under a file called websites, Paul Gruen, ICM505. And now this should look familiar where we have badges, bio, contacts, hobbies, index, and all of this other stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I've taken my original, let's see, I want to copy this. I don't want it to do it in my browser. So I'm going to need to open up another window. Boom. Xampp htdocs. So now from maybe it's on my desktop. For me, it was on another place. I'm going to take this folder and I'm going to drag it and I'm going to copy it here. Now that folder is there. Minimize this. Let me come back to my local host, refresh it. Now I have an ICM505 folder. Now if I click ICM505, now it's automatically, because my web server is running, it's automatically showing me my index page. So we're up and running. We have a local web server going and working. One other thing I want to do before I forget is I want to start Filezilla. And if I go File, Site Manager, because I've saved my things in my Site Manager, and if I go paulgruen.com, you can see here that I probably used to work with my, I have my local site here where it's websitespaulgruen.com for ICM505. Now what I'm going to want to do is on my local site, I'm going to want to change this. I want to go : I want to find my Xampp folder, and then within my Xampp folder, my htdocs folder, and then here's my ICM505 folder. And now over on my remote site, that I go into my www folder, and here's my ICM505 folder. And now that I'm even on the same side. So remember, in Filezilla, because we now have a copy, we took a copy of our original ICM505 folder. Maybe it was on our desktop, maybe it was in our documents folder, maybe it was somewhere else. We've moved it underneath the htdocs that in Filezilla, we need to also make change to our source folder. I'm not going to be FTPing stuff up there at this point, but we will be doing that. Okay, so now going back to my computer, I'm here now. Xampp, htdocs, ICM505. What I want to do, excuse me, right click, copy, and then Control V, paste. And I'm going to rename this copy, and I'm going to call this -v1. Now, when I go back out to my browser, go localhost, you'll see that I have ICM505 and ICM505 v1. And basically right now they're identical, but this is a great way to make backup copies of your work before you start changing it and mucking with things. Okay? And what you want to do is say, okay, I know my website's doing pretty good and it's right where I want it, but I'm getting ready to make some major changes. So let me take that whole folder and copy it, and then I'll do the changes to the new folder, to the folder. So now let's start making this a PHP-based file, a file system, and start saving a lot of work and time. So I'm going to go into ICM505, whoops, not on my browser. What I want to do is I want to go into Explorer, go into my ICM505 folder, and all of these HTML pages, what I want to do is I want to rename them. And basically, I want to change HTML to PHP. Okay, so now you can see that all of my files, HTML files, have been changed to .php. Now, if I go back to my browser, localhost, my server is running, and if I click on the ICM505 folder, my page still works because the web server says, I know what an index.php page is, and I know what index.html is, and I don't care. I'll make either of them work. Now, what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to stop the web server. So now if I stop the web server, and if I type localhost, the web server is not running. I am now in my Windows Explorer, and if I click on index.php, I go right into Notepad. Remember when this was an HTML page? So watch what happens. If I click the index.html, I'm going to rename it without the web server HTML. I click this, I get the page. again, notice here it's saying file Xampp htdocs. That's basically opening up a file without a web server running. And we're not going to be doing that anymore in this class, because ideally you'll be using this technique that I'm about to show you. Type index PHP for the file name, click it, we go into Notepad. And ideally you want to be using Notepad++, but for whatever reason it's just defaulting um, for PHP files into the old Notepad. No big deal. Okay, so now let's go back. Now let's get my web server up and running again. It's running. Now I go back in my browser, localhost. I'm getting my stuff, and I go to ICM505. It's working the way I want. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to create a little test file for us. Okay, so I want to open up Notepad++. And this is how you write PHP code. Greater than question mark PHP is the start tag, and then question mark end is the end tag. Now, you can put PHP code anywhere throughout your HTML document. And what will happen is that the PHP interpreter working with the web server will say, I know the difference between HTML code and PHP code. I'm going to create a single function called PHP info. This is an embedded command that actually displays some info with a semicolon. PHP info, parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. I'm going to go File, Save As, and let's put this in my ICM505 folder in my Xampp. Xampp, htdocs, ICM505, and then what I want to do is I want to call this PHP info.php. And then if I save it, now it's there. Now, going back to my browser, localhost ICM505, I don't have a menu link for it, but if I type php info.php, I'm now getting all the configuration information about my website and my PHP setup. These are all the configuration variables. And most important, it's telling me that PHP is working. Do not put this PHP info file out on your web server. You don't want other websites to scan your site and get this information, and they could potentially use this to hack your computer. So don't FTP this file out to your website and make that available. Okay, so your PHP info file is there. If we take a look in Explorer, we can see that the file is there, and our web server is running, PHP is running, and we're good to go. What I'd like you to do now in your ICM 505 folders to create a new subfolder and call it View. We're going to use, there's a framework style called MVC, Model View Controller. We're not going to get into it too hard and too hot and too heavy, but we're going to get into it enough to start using a best practice to put our view type files, our display files, into this folder. So now, remember, our web page is building, and what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to make our life a little easier. And what we're going to do is create some files and put them in the view folder to just to make things more better, much more efficient for us. So I'm going to close the PHP info. Again, do not FTP that out. I'm going to go File, Open, and I'm going to take my, I'm guessing my template page should actually be in pretty good shape. Let's see. Oh, I don't have, no, I'm not going to take my template page. I'm going to actually take, it looks like I didn't update it enough. I'm going to open my index page. And now what I want to do is I want to create a new file, File Open, and sorry, not File New, and I'm going to take this header beginning from my index page, beginning of the header to the end of the header, and I'm going to Control X, cut it right out of there, and I'm going to put it right here into this new blank file. File, Save. I'm going to put it in my View folder, and I'm going to call it header.php. Now what I'm going to do is File, New, and I'm just going to put right here, I'm just going to put header here, just as a little reminder. I'm going to take my footer information, Control X, and put that right here. And I'm going to go File, Save As. It's going to go in my view, and it's going to be footer.php. Now, if I take a look here in Explorer, I've got two files, footer and header. And hopefully you can get a sense of where we're going to go with this. And basically, I don't need to do anything with them. Do you know what I probably should do? Is put a PHP at the beginning of each. PHP that. So add that code to the beginning of each, where it's less than $PHP space $PHP. Add this to the header and the footer as the first line, and then save all of that. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is where your header section used to be in your index page, I'd like you to put this code. Less than $PHP space include space single quote referencing the view folder slash header.php single quote semicolon greater than. And then down where your footer was, you can do the same thing. And this time here, just put footer PHP. Save it, come back out to your local host, ICM505, and it should work fine. Now, if I take this header and if I just change the name to like header 4 and save it, and then if I refresh the page, I'm getting an error like this. So basically, in the view, it says include view header 4 PHP failed. There's no such file. So if you are trying to include something that doesn't exist, it's not there, you're going to have a problem. So now I'm going to save that back. I'll save it, refresh the page, and now it's there. Now, notice here, I'm going to make a change like to the footer. So before, if we had to change the menu item or the header or the footer, we would have had to go to every single page. Now all we have to do is I'm going to go to my footer, And I'm going to change 11 Sand Street to 40 Baker Street. I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh the page. And notice now the footer changed. So now what I need to do to make this work for me is go File, Open, go to my ICM505 folder, and then I'm going to take all of my PHP files, and I'm going to open them all. And, oh, wait a minute, do you know what happened is? It's opening them, did it the wrong way. I don't want to do it this way. Let's see. Should we go File, Open. And basically what I want to do now is go to my Badges folder, File, and I want to take this header information, and I want to put it right here. I want to delete the old header and put it right there. Go to the bottom of my badges, and I want to take this footer include link and put it right here. And I've got the include link for that. So now, if I save that, now what happens is I'm on my index page, I refresh it, and if I click badges, oh, I've got a problem here. How come? My link isn't working. Oh, look it. It's going to badges HTML. Well, what we now need to do is we need to go into our header and change all of our HTML references to PHP. But the good news is we only have to do this now to one place. So now when you add a new item, menu samples is still that way. I'm going to keep that one because I didn't change that yet. And then PHP. So now what's nice is if I take this link here, I'm just going to call this new temporarily, save this. Now I'm on my index page, I refresh it, and when I refreshed it, it saw the change to new. Now right now I've only updated, if I go to hobbies, notice that new's not here because the hobbies PHP page hasn't had the includes put into it. But if I go to badges HTML, that's happening because of the wrong page. So if I go home, because I haven't changed everything yet, let's just go back to ICM505. If I go to badges, that is got the new include in it, so I can go home to badges. Now what I want to do is I want to go File, Open, and I want to go to my bio page, and I want to get my header link for my bio page. And then I want to get my footer link. And I want to put that in my bio page as well. Notice that the bio page right now is saying 11 Sand Street, but now I put the footer, my bio page, I save it. And it's a good idea when you're testing it to take the include file and make a couple of little changes to it so you know that it's working on your pages, and then you can change it back. So now if I go home, bio, notice I have the new link. That means the include's working, and I have 40 Baker Street. So now what I'd like you to do is to change every single page to now use the include reference to your header and footer. And what you can see, and this technique can be used in a lot of different ways. I'm just keeping it simple right now. If you wanted to, you could actually include your head sections and you can include a lot of other stuff. But right now, I think it just makes sense to have our header and our footer included. And if you wanted to, in your header, you could actually do another include to a menu PHP page as well if you wanted to. And that way you could have other things. But I think right now, just keeping it simple where the header and the footer is the same. So go ahead now and fix all of your pages to use these include files. And then basically, you will not need to have a yeah. And then when you've got all this work done, submit for your web server badge and post for I just want one nomination and be able to show that you got it all working, and also add a little comments about what you think about this technique. And then submit your screenshots via the assignment, and I think we'll be good to go. So I think we're heading in the right direction. And then obviously take this new ICM505 folder and FTP it out. Now the one problem you're going to have in Filezilla is that all these HTML pages are going to be out there. So if I F5 here, let's see. Notice here that I now have resume PHP. I've got all these PHP pages. I have all these HTML pages. What I can actually do is I can delete out on my Bluehost account. I can delete all of those pages and just put the PHP files out there instead. We don't need HTML.html anymore now that we're using a local web server and using PHP includes. Post any questions you have on the discussion board, and I think we'll be in good shape. Thank you.